The story I'm going to share with you today is meant to help you get curious about whatever it is that you're dealing with. On some level, this is just a story about a ridiculous thing that happened at the office, and we can laugh about it, like most of my friends did. On another, it's about privilege and power, and we can be angry about it, like I did at first. But if we look deeper, it can also be a story about something more meaningful. It can be a sign, it can be guidance, it can be a path to another chapter of a life, which is what it ended up being for me. The first time I was asked to expand my perspective of this moment in my life was by my coach, who had the wisdom to see that there was a lesson in here for me. After that, I decided to continue expanding my understanding of why I experienced this and what it meant for me, my life, and what I could decide to do with it. So let's get started. I worked at a small company where I was tasked to come up with a seating chart for a new office space. The return to office efforts were underway in full force, so the guidance I was given was whoever is coming into the office regularly gets a seat by the best view. And then the other piece of guidance was that teams sit together. A man about the age of 40 emails me and lets me know he would like to sit by a window. So I give the instructions to our interns, and I mention that this person wants to sit by a window, but his entire team that he works with doesn't normally come into the office. So the seat he was assigned was by a window, but not the window with the nicest view. And then we had the execs do a walkthrough, and everyone approved, and we sent out the seating chart. A day or two later, I get a call from my colleague who's at the office. She says that this individual's at the office, and he's pretty upset about his seat. While I'm chatting with her, one of the executives calls me. He's also at the office, and he says, "Hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up. This guy is pretty upset about where he's sitting." I genuinely did not know what happened, so I messaged him and asked if everything was okay. He replies, "I'm livid," and then proceeds to tell me that this is the most disrespected he has felt in his entire career here. I thought he was kidding, and thank God I didn't reply with an LOL because that's what I would normally do. So I asked him what exactly he was upset about. He replied that based on his title, his contribution, and his tenure, he should have the seat that was assigned to another one of his colleagues, and specifically calls out someone else. So now I'm over here okay, so does this man want me to ask this other man to give up his seat? I'm just not sure what to do. Title and contribution and tenure were not the criteria I was given for how we were assigning seats in this new office space. So now I'm here super confused. What did I do wrong? And in the weeks that followed, I was approached by several colleagues who said he was really angry. I got passive-aggressive emails from his teammates. Someone actually emailed the CEO and the COO about the seating arrangement. The seating chart situation was probably the most ridiculous thing that has ever happened to me in my career. And trust me, I've worked at a lot of really interesting places, and a lot of ridiculous stuff has happened in my professional life. Now, I want to give you a little context. This is about me. In this role, I was generally okay. I was not super happy. The job was easy, it was good money, but I knew I wasn't doing what I was meant to be doing. I tried. I was really close. I was HR, and HR for me was about creating workplaces where people can thrive and helping people get ahead in their careers and feel good about their jobs. That's how I saw my job. I realize that's not how everyone sees the job of HR, but that was always how I approached the work that I did. The other piece of information that I think is important to share is that I tried to quit this job about 4 months into it because I had a very strong feeling that this was not the place for me. I didn't leave at that time, and it didn't get easier. The issues were not with the work itself. It was these random ridiculous things that would happen that would kind of leave me wondering, is this normal behavior? I genuinely was confused by the stuff that was happening at this office. An example is a woman once yelled at me at one of our company retreats because I rolled out a return to office policy. And being HR is hard, you guys. You're constantly the face of policies that people don't like and policies that they don't understand because they're so focused on thinking about their personal experience. And then HR and the executives and leadership, they have to think about everyone's experience, right? What's fair and what's consistent and how do we scale this, right? And so I've made sense in the way that I do of why I ended up working in HR, and that's a story for another time, but back to the story. So I'm generally really good at raising my perspective and thinking about things in new ways that help me problem solve and feel good about my life. It's actually one of the things I do really, really well, and it's done a lot for me in my career. I remember saying to the CEO one day, around this time that this desk situation, it was a sign of a disengaged, unhappy employee. I told him this is not about a desk at the office. And I said to him, if this guy actually liked his job and his life, he wouldn't be so worked up over something as silly as the location of his desk at the office. To me, this was a disengaged, unhappy employee. But here's the problem with that perspective that I didn't see at that time that I see now. I wasn't thinking about me. I was focused on him and his behavior. See, I think everything that is happening to you is actually for you. It's never about the other person. But I didn't have this understanding of life in the world at that time. So around that time, I had a call with my coach. And she, in her many more years of wisdom than I had, said, Sarah, pause and pay attention. What is the universe trying to tell you through this really strange situation? And my first answer immediately was that I needed to quit my job. I said it almost jokingly, but then I paused. Here's more context. For about 7 or 8 months before this incident, around the time of the retreat where I got yelled at for that RTO policy, I had been waking up every morning rehearsing my exit strategy from this role and from this place. In my head every morning, I was getting ready to go to work. And this is like I would sit in meditation and then I'd get up and I'd start getting ready to go to work. And I'd be rehearsing in my head how I would quit my job. I would think about when I would quit and what I would say, and where I'd get stuck every time is, what the heck am I going to do after this? I really didn't feel like applying to another job. And then I'd go to work, and I was genuinely happy because I really do enjoy seeing people and being at an office. And many of my colleagues were very lovely human beings who I really enjoyed sharing time and space with. And then another day would go by, and I hadn't quit my job. This was my life for almost a year. So back to the story. During this conversation with my coach, she encouraged me to go deeper after my whole I want to quit my job comment. She didn't disagree with me. She just pushed me to think deeper. She forced me to question what I had just said, like a great coach does. So after a pause, I said, well, look, if I was not HR here, and if I were this guy's coach, I would have loved to unpack this problem with him, because I think we'd find out that this wasn't actually about a desk. And I think I could help him find the cause of his unhappiness. And I bet you whatever that cause is affecting more than just his work life. And I said to her, this one little problem could lead to us making a huge change in his life. And I think he'd be happier. And my coach smiled and she said, well, why can't you do that as HR? And I didn't have an answer at that time, not a good one at least. But I knew I was exhausted and I didn't want to fight this battle. But something else was tugging at me, a newfound understanding of my own purpose in life, which came out of me in that answer that I just gave to my coach. I knew it was time to do the thing I had been doing on the side for a decade, but actually do it for real this time, to start that coaching practice. As scary as that sounded, I felt like this was really the time. So a few weeks later, I finally resigned from that job. The story of that resignation might be another podcast episode because that was also interesting. Okay, so the takeaways. If something awful is happening to you at work, here's my advice. Step out of the scene. Take a higher perspective, a neutral one if you can. And how do you do that? You do that by getting curious. If my coach hadn't encouraged me to question why the situation was happening for me and why now, I would have probably not quit that job, at least not at that time. If you're dealing with situations at work that make no sense, they're almost like laughable, and we all have these situations, right? It's like unbelievable stuff that's happening. Remember, the universe does have a sense of humor. So when life gets really frustrating, just hit pause for a second. Step back and observe the scene. You see, most of us waste our time asking, why is this person doing this to me? Why are they being this way? Why do they hate me? Why is my manager not promoting me? Why did this person give me bad feedback? Instead, I'm asking you and I'm encouraging you to get curious about yourself and your experience and the situation. Ask yourself, why is this happening for me? Why is it happening right now? What am I supposed to learn here? And most importantly, what did I recently ask for? Or what do I really want in my heart? What's been calling to me that is causing this chaos in my life? This is not easy work, because I think you'll find the chaos is meant to encourage you to make a move. And it's not easy because that takes courage. Because many of us sit around waiting for life to make its move. We've all been there, right? We're sitting there and we're like, well, let's see what life does. Let's see what happens. But life doesn't do anything. Life works through you. You co-create your experience here. And my good friend Annie always reminds me of the movie Moana. Annie always says, remember, the ocean always helps Moana. But she has to take that first step. I would have been stuck in that life lesson for God knows how long if I hadn't made the decision to leave. Now, I'm not telling you to quit your job. Leaving was not my only option. Could I have stayed and tried to make this work? Yeah, I could have. The desk thing would have probably blown over. The next thing would have flared up. Life would have just moved on. But I chose the path that was the truest one for me at that time. But that took a lot of courage and a lot of reframes and a lot of questioning of myself and my desires. It took being really honest about where I was and what it was that I wanted from my own life. And that was not easy. This decision was not easy. Having a safe, predictable income is really nice. But I knew that I was probably ready for my next challenge. And honestly, it's been really good. I've grown a lot since I left that role. It's been really hard, and this new life has stretched me. But my life now on who dealt with that seating chart situation, and I realize I was too afraid to let go of a safe, predictable, easy thing. But every day, I was praying that my situation would get better. And every day I'd be like, man, I wish I could just do something different. I wish I could have that coaching practice. I can't wait until that happens, right? So the universe made that safe and predictable thing really hard to deal with so that I could take the step that I needed to take. It was scary because what was on the other side of that decision was not just a coaching practice, a dream that I'd been dreaming for 13 years. It was so much bigger than that. It was an entire shift in my identity. It was me stepping into a new version of myself. I'd have to let go of a version of me that I've built over a decade that I had worked so hard to build. I'd have to be brave enough to start my professional life over again. And that was really scary, even if I was afraid to admit it. So, to wrap up the story, my desk at the office had a great view. I was facing my colleague, a plant behind him, and then the office manager and the front entrance. I was HR, and I loved being the person who warmly welcomed people to our place of work. But the best view I've had of that office is the one that I've discovered or unpacked almost 2 years after leaving it, after a lot of inner work and a lot of perspective shifting to help me make sense of my experience there, to find meaning and purpose in every difficult interaction I had, because they were all helping me become the next version of myself and step into my next chapter.